Heavily packed with Easter eggs and full of unexpected cameos, The Mandalorian strikes right at the hearts of Star Wars fans. Hi, I'm Peter, and you're watching OSSA, and we're going to count down all the hidden details and Star Wars Easter eggs you might have missed in The Mandalorian. From the very beginning of the very first episode, we see Mando being a badass bounty hunter in a scene that could have come straight out of an old western. From the moment he steps into an alien pub, Mando's presence silences the chatter of that weird language. But do you have any idea what that language actually is? Well, it's called Huttese, and it was the language Jabba the Hutt spoke in Return of the Jedi. Mando captures the wanted alien Mithril, and, in case you didn't recognize the actor, he's none other than American comedian Horatio Sanz, best known for being part of the crew of Saturday Night Live. Mando warns the captive Mithril that he can bring him in warm, or he can bring him in cold. That seems like a pretty deadly sounding threat, but it turns out that Mando doesn't mean Mithril is going to end up on the slab, but rather in it. Naturally, the alien creature tries to make a break for it while they're jetting through space in Mando's ship, but he ends up frozen in carbonite, just like Han Solo in The Empire Strikes Back. And this isn't the only Star Wars reference in this scene, it's just the most obvious. Before Mithril gets frozen, he mentions that he hoped to spend Life Day with his family. And only true Star Wars fans know that Life Day is nothing short of the equivalent of Christmas Day in George Lucas's universe. Life Day was first introduced in the hard-to-find 1978 TV variety show, The Star Wars Holiday Special, and it's hard to find for a good reason. Mando later meets Greef Karga, played by Carl Weathers, to get his payment for turning in the wanted alien. Karga offers Imperial Credits, but Mando refuses on the grounds that the Empire doesn't exist anymore and he has no faith in their credits. This little scene might seem like it's of little importance, but trust me, it's 100% another Star Wars reference, and it's deeper than you can imagine. Remember the scene from Phantom Menace where Qui-Gon Jinn tries to convince junk dealer Watto from Tatooine that credits will be fine as payment for ship parts?
I have 20,000 Republic Dactari.
Well, Qui-Gon Jinn even tried to use that classic Jedi mind trick, but it simply doesn't work, because nothing could have persuaded sly Toydarian Watto that Republic credits were worth something. In fact, he barely even considers them money.
Republic credits? Republic credits are no good out here. I need something more real.
Well, this situation seems to have changed by the time The Mandalorian Episode 5 is set. Disney Plus series are based in the post-Imperial era when the New Republic has arisen, rendering Imperial credits kind of obsolete. Another reason why there's a new currency, as far as the Outer Rim and Tatooine, is probably due to the dwindling influence of the Hutt clan on the planet now that Jabba's kicked the bucket. And for these reasons, amongst others, Mando prefers Beskar Steel in payment for his services, which is another Star Wars reference. The first ever mention of Beskar Steel in the Star Wars universe is in the Clone Wars. And it was said that Beskar Steel is the most resistant metal that exists in the entire galaxy, making it the Star Wars equivalent of Mithril from Lord of the Rings, or adamantium from the Marvel universe maybe. Which totally explains why Mando wants to be paid in it. Soon after Mando completes his task, he asks for another one. In fact, as many are as available. But Greef has a special job just for Mando, and this one is way more complicated and mysterious. Mando takes a job capturing a weird creature only forearmed with the knowledge that it's at least 50 years old. And the man who makes him the offer? Oh, nobody special, just legendary German movie director Werner Herzog, who was invited because the director of The Mandalorian, Dave Filoni, is a huge fan of his work. The creature at the end of the first episode is revealed to be Baby Yoda, which, it's a bit of a misnomer, as obviously it's not Yoda, but instead a creature of the same species. But as that species name is officially unknown in the Star Wars universe, everybody's just taken to calling it Baby Yoda. Mando captures him with the help of a bounty droid who bears a strong resemblance to the iconic IG-88. Maybe he's a distant cousin. Well, more on that later, so stay tuned, because this is the perfect introduction to discussing the droids and creatures Mando meets on his way to Baby Yoda, as well as during all of their mutual adventures in Season 1. Creatures, droids, and robots. Remember that half dinosaur, half piranha creature? Of course you do. It's called Blurg, and it also appeared in the animated series The Clone Wars. And some of you might have mistaken it for the other creature that Mando rides in the 5th episode, but they're actually different. Look closely. This is Blurg, and this is a dewback. And yes, dewbacks were also previously spotted in Star Wars, this time rode by sand troopers in the opening act of A New Hope on the planet Tatooine. Those poor dewbacks might have been left behind in the desert after the fall of the Empire, which probably explains how Mando could have found a tame one so easily. And what about another memorable creature from Tatooine that we saw in Star Wars A New Hope? Jawas! Since their first appearance, it seems like little has changed. I mean, their clothes, their vehicles, their blasters, the way they speak, even their business activity, everything is comfortably familiar. The only thing that The Mandalorian has added is a love for some kind of alien rhino eggs. And this rhino creature is called a mudhorn. Creative, right? And it's probably the only, or almost the only, creature created purely for The Mandalorian. And that gun that Mando uses to evaporate those little Jawas is also a callback. It's called an Amban Phase Pulse Blaster, and it was previously used by Boba Fett in the animated segments of the aforementioned notorious holiday special. And there's another creature that also appeared in prior movies and series, a Lothcat. Remember the scene where Baby Yoda is scared of a giant cat? Well, you can catch a glimpse of a Lothcat in the series Star Wars Rebels. And yeah, it's easy to see how such a fearsome creature could scare the hell out of anyone, but especially if you're a tiny, cute, and absolutely gentle sweetheart. And now getting back to the droids in The Mandalorian, there are plenty of references to choose from. How about the gatekeeper droid that scanned Mando's ID in the first episode, one of which was first seen as a guard in Jabba's palace? Or the R5 droid, which initially appeared in A New Hope and then promptly exploded because of a bad motivator. And then there's those hologram messages and even the ice cream maker from Empire Strikes Back that ended up becoming a meme. In The Mandalorian though, this machine finally has a clear purpose. It's revealed to be a safe for treasures and credits. Was it meant to be a security box from the beginning, or did Jon Favreau just invent this for the Mandalorian series? Let us know if you think the creators of The Mandalorian took any other liberties in the comments below. Anyhow, now we finally understand why that guy from The Empire Strikes Back was so keen to keep a tight hold of it. And who could forget about IG-88? Or should I say IG-11, whose appearance is based on the bounty hunting droid that we get a glimpse of as part of the motley crew of bounty hunters assembled by Darth Vader in Empire. We now discover why we haven't seen more of them since, as The Mandalorian makes it look like they have some intensely suicidal tendencies. And then there are all sorts of other mechanized marvel, with the AT-ST, which appeared in the 4th episode, being one of the most obvious homages to Star Wars. In my opinion, the coolest reference in that episode wasn't just the one instance with the walker, but maybe the entire episode as a whole. As mentioned before, there are strong overtones of classic westerns throughout the show, and this episode really hammers that theme home. Have you ever seen a film where a group of brave people help settlers from a small village to protect themselves from an outside threat? Well, that's clearly a reference to the Magnificent Seven, and its plot has a lot of similarities with the 4th episode. Though, to be fair, The Magnificent Seven is itself a reinvention of another movie, a Japanese one called Seven Samurai by cinema genius Akira Kurosawa. And it was Kurosawa's The Hidden Fortress that inspired the first ever Star Wars film, so we've come back full circle. Why don't we move on to some of the cameos and stars whose odd appearances might have passed you by? Show cameos. We've already spoken about Horatio Sands, but he wasn't the only actor who wasn't all that easy to recognize. I mean, did you spot Nick Nolte? How about now? I have spoken. That's right, the Oscar-nominated actor played Kul in the very first episode of The Mandalorian. Another celeb who almost went entirely unnoticed was Taika Waititi, the star and director of What We Do in the Shadows, Thor Ragnarok, Jojo Rabbit, and many, many more. Taika provided the voice of the aforementioned droid with a death wish, IG-11. And the showrunner himself even had a cameo too. Jon Favreau got his very own role in the show, though it was actually a very sneaky move and made it almost impossible to notice him. He was the voice of another Mandalorian named Paz Vizsla in a short scene in episode 2. And not only did Jon Favreau get a cameo, but so did 3 other directors of the episodes of The Mandalorian. Remember the pilots of those X-Wings in episode 6? Well, it's good that the show got beyond the pilot stage, because those folks are actually the people who directed the show we love so much today. So next time you rewatch it, pay attention, because they've earned it. We could dedicate an entire video series just to talking about the Easter eggs and hidden details we picked up on. But before this video ends, let's talk about another important reference that has almost nothing to do with the Star Wars universe. The Mandalorian soundtrack was obviously inspired by the work of epic composer John Williams, but when it comes to revolutionary work in evoking the ambiance of a Western through the soundtrack alone, there's only one name that comes to mind. Yep, Maestro Ennio Morricone. And it's not like there's a specific track in the Mandalorian soundtrack that sounds like any other specific track by Morricone. No, the whole score, created by Ludwig Göransson, has been composed with the influence of the Italian maestro in mind. In fact, it sounds like this great collaboration between the two greatest movie composers ever, John Williams and Ennio Morricone, making the soundtrack to a sci-fantasy western in space, which is the perfect example of what makes The Mandalorian so great. What do you guys think? How much of this referential comedy is the show paying tribute to the Lucasfilm universe, and how much do these meta homages sometimes take you out of the show? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for watching this video, subscribe to our channel, click on the bell, and may the Force be with you. Always.